Hi, everyone. I'm Claudia Valdiviezo.
I'm Luciana Valdiviezo.
We're sisters, and we want to welcome you to Where We Land. It's our podcast where we meet a fellow immigrant and talk about all the challenges and quirks of living in a country you weren't born in.
Yeah, I'm kind of nervous, actually. I've never done anything like this before, but also very excited. We're going to try our best to speak with a wide variety of immigrants here in the U.S., people from different countries, people who immigrated here when they were young, as students, adults, or even as babies, people who moved here because they had no choice, and people who came to America because they could choose.
We've already lined up the first few guests, and I'm so excited for you to meet them. We have some really, really cool people coming on the show. Some really impressive people, actually.
Yeah, amazing that they agreed to speak with us. We're so honored to have them.
Okay, but before we get to all that, for our inaugural episode, it's just us.
We were thinking it's only fair that we share more about ourselves and how we landed here.
Exactly. We were both born in Trujillo, Peru in the 1980s. We lived with our two older sisters who are twins themselves and our mom and our dad. And we lived right across the street from our paternal grandparents. We were all really close. Like Sundays, we would sometimes ask to spend the night at our grandparents' house instead of sleeping in our own beds. Mm-hmm. So we lived there until, I want to say I was 5. Lucy, you were probably 6 or 7.
You were 4. I was 5.
I was 4?
I think I moved at age 5. Oh my God, we should probably get this
We
straight.
should fact check this. We should fact check this with our mother.
Okay.
So we were really, really young. We had a lot of family in Peru. We had a bunch of cousins, all different ages. We were definitely the youngest around at the time. And yeah, our family was just big and loud. And we were all, with our sisters, just very close. Mm-hmm. At that time in Peru also, in the late 80s, there was a lot of economic instability. Things were a little wild and
chaotic. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Chaotic. But as time went on and the situation got worse and worse, those type of things started to get closer to home. That's when our parents decided, you know what, the best thing I think is for us to look for opportunities elsewhere. And Dad had some friends in the U.S. Who lived there. They were Peruvian, but lived in the States with their families. And Dad and Granddad, being businessmen, they looked for business opportunities to invest in the U.S. Dad found a business partner that was also Peruvian and he wanted to work with. And that was it. Off we went.
Yeah, I mean, it was fair to say it felt very unsafe in Peru. I think a lot of people were kind of evaluating, like, is it better to get my family out of here? And yes, our family did the latter. And we landed in Visalia, California.
Of all places, all places.
Obviously, when you're so little, I think we were told we're going to Disney because we had been to Disney. And so we were like, okay, like that's kind of our idea of America right now. And it's like, boom,
yes.
We're not going to Disney, we're moving. And I guess like there's no way to tell toddlers, this is happening in a way that they're actually going to understand. But I do remember understanding that I was far. That part had been made clear.
Yes.
And I was in this place that didn't really seem, it was like kind of what we had seen in movies, maybe. That was kind of our experience with America early on. Really, we didn't know much about it. Right?
Yes. And I just want to be clear that our parents weren't trying to lie to us when they said, oh, we're going to Disney.
No.
That's not what they were doing. I think that was our only reference for what America was. Yeah. So it was like, remember Disneyland? We've been there. That's where we're going.
Exactly.
It was more that vibe. So yeah. Don't get mad at our parents.
No. I think they were also like leaving a scary situation. I think themselves, it was a hard thing to decide to do, and they did it. I think they did the best they could. So early memories that come to mind from those first days, the house. Like, we lived in a very suburban, cul-de-sac, super American childhood, like literally what we had seen in the movies. And our parents leaned into the American life, like real hard. Like our dad taught us to ride bikes. He bought us like mitts and a baseball and taught us to catch. Like we would never do that in Peru. That's never. But they leaned into like the American life.
It's funny that you mentioned that you were aware of like this distance and how we were in a different place. And I'm just wondering how much like a year really does affect you, how different you are as a kid from like 4 to 5 or 5 to 6. Mm-hmm. Because I did not register any of that at all.
Yeah.
Like to me, my world in Peru was my sisters, my mom and dad, and my grandparents. That was it. Mm-hmm, and then coming to the States, like I was still with my sisters and my mom and dad. So I didn't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so far away now. I don't remember feeling like we're in this brand new far away place. I remember, we're in a new house. That's how I thought of it. That's, I think, as far as my brain could conceptualize. Once again, if I was 4 years old, like you allege.
Yeah.
Yes, that's all a 4-year-old can contain.
4 or 5. And look, I might be misremembering too. I might be putting together concepts from later, from when I was 6 or 7. I do remember first day of school though. Like first day in this new American school. Mm-hmm. I didn't know a word of English. And my mom had, she dropped off the twins, which were older, at a middle school. Me at an elementary school. Like I have images of this, but I don't remember everything. But when my husband went to Peru, he said, like, could you tell me a story about Luciana? And, my mom had, she was like, sure, I'll tell you the story of her first day of school in America where she didn't know any English. And then when I go to pick her up at pickup, she is surrounded by like 5 new friends and she's organized play dates with each of them and is like, Mom, this one's coming over to our house tomorrow and I'm going to her house the next day. And she was like, you can't even speak English. Like, how did you organize this, And I think that that's kind of stuck with me through life. Like I am that person that will probably talk to, will find a way to make a friend regardless of language.
Yeah.
And I guess like how developed are your language skills anyway at that age, right? At like first grade.
Yeah. That's how I felt at school, actually. I didn't feel, once again, we're talking kindergarten. Right. So like my peers were not masters of the English language. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We were all little kids learning the ABCs together. So I didn't really feel too much of a like disadvantage with language. Mm-hmm. I do remember, however, very vividly when I would hear a new word that I didn't know, because I feel like my vocabulary was so limited when I first got there. Like I have a very distinct memory of learning the word finished. I didn't know that word. I had never heard it. And I just remember we would get like worksheets, like phonics worksheets or whatever. And after you were done filling them out, like I remember I would just sit there quietly and wait for the teacher to tell me what to do next because I had already finished.
Right.
And then I saw that my classmates, whenever they would finish, they would like drop their pencil on the table and raise their hand straight up in the air and go, finished. And I was like, what? What's going on? What are they doing? Is something happening?
Right.
And after I observed—
Oh, that's the trick, right.
Yeah. After I observed this behavior, like more than once, I was like, oh, that's what you're supposed to do, I guess, when you're done with your work. Like you raise your hand and you say finished. I am embarrassed to say that it took me way too many months to realize that that was just what the overeager kids did. Like the really bratty, I'm done.
I did it before everybody. Yes. And the first one, it was probably like a little race. We were, though, trying to like fit in. Our parents did make that easy for us in some ways because they were like, okay, what is American life? Okay, you joined the baseball team, you play basketball, we did Girl Scouts. Do you remember? We did Girl Scouts.
Which that was such a bad move.
It was so foreign. It was just so like, we're like, we tried it. And like, this is not, it's too much of a stretch. But our parents at least exposed us to it. However, I do remember my dad also grounding us and like, but you remember, you're Peruvian. They would speak to us Spanish at home. We would have Peruvian food. Like we would be sent a cold lunch because like kids are sent their lunch. But we knew internally, we would pretend that that's lunch because we knew that the minute we came home, we were going to have a hot lunch.
Yep.
We were going to have a hot lunch.
Yeah, a full meal.
My mom's
full meal.
Yeah, a full meal. Because in Peru, like that's the main meal of the day. It's not dinner. It's lunch. And it's a big lunch, you know?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up because there is, I think, credit to give to our mom and dad in the sense that they both assimilated really well, but were also so inescapably Peruvian because they have like the thickest accents in the world.
Right.
And so like they really embraced, like you said, the American culture as like these fun customs that we're going to all participate in because that's what people do here, while at the same time never hiding who they really were or where they were from. Even in the way they participated in things or spoke about things, they were always Peruvians living in America. I think what they did for us is that they showed us that it was okay for us to assimilate as much or as little as we wanted while also keeping our Peruvianness intact. Like we always knew in our heads, we're Peruvian. Like we would celebrate Thanksgiving, for example, and we would do the turkey and we would overeat and we would say what we were thankful for. But while we were doing it, I think it was clear to our entire family that this isn't really ours. Like if we were in Peru, we wouldn't be doing this. Like this is what Americans do because of their history, not our history, their history. And this is important for them. And we're living here. So let's participate in it. But we're Peruvian and we speak Spanish and we watch football. Like, you know?
And we speak Spanish, we eat Peruvian food. And like, I think when my father or mother would pick up on us becoming less Peruvian, I think they would like, all right, like, we got to go to Peru for like a month.
I feel like they kept our Peruvianness while letting us explore American culture freely.
Freely,
Which I think is what allowed us to keep both of our identities so that when eventually we moved back to Peru, we still had the Peruvian side. I think it would have been so easy for me at allegedly 4 years old to just become fully Americanized. Like a 4-year-old is a blank slate.
Right. Yes, or like, you know, like if they hadn't like really pushed us with the language, like it was hard. You and I would switch to English all the time as soon as we could.
All the time.
Because again, when we moved back to Peru, okay, we picked up Spanish right away because they put us in like those intense lessons over the summer. We moved back summer of 98. And I remember like we knew that we had to fit in like all of the stuff that we did at home, the stuff that we consumed. Like we'd be watching Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
We would be playing
Donkey Kong Country
on our Super Nintendo. We would play in English. We would talk in English. We would consume content that was in English. Our whole life was super American indoors. But the minute we walked out, we switched to Spanish and we would kind of just nod when our friends would talk about like whatever telenovelas they were watching or Peruvian stuff they were consuming. And we're like, I'm like, we don't know any of that.
So clueless.
But also we would not be caught dead speaking English because we didn't want to be las gringas. We wanted to be Peruvian. We wanted to like blend. We're like, we are Peruvian, right? We're Peruvian. Why do I feel so foreign? I'm Peruvian. And it's like, oh wait, I'm not that Peruvian. I guess.
No, our poor little souls, we couldn't hide the Americanness if we tried. Like, we spoke with the thickest, most embarrassing American accents, and we didn't know it.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't know it. When we got to Peru, we were like, yeah, we speak Spanish all the time with our parents. And then we opened our mouths. I remember opening my mouth in school and everyone just being like, why do you talk like that?
I know.
Why do you have an American accent?
So bad.
What? You're not American? And I'm like, oh, I have an accent. I did not know. News to me.
Oh, I'm struggling to find words that I'm supposed to know. Like, what is this, you know? And it was just like, so weird.
Oh my gosh, Luciana, I have to tell you the most embarrassing story that I just remembered. Okay, so you know Gianmarco, right?
Yeah.
Gianmarco. He's a very famous Peruvian singer. All Peruvians are very
we know
proud
of
him
songs,
and of his success.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, now we do.
Yes.
But when we first got to Peru, I would hear people mentioning Gianmarco. And I would be like, okay, I had pieced together from the way that they had mentioned him, I had pieced together that he was a singer.
Right.
But in my head, I was like, is he like
Google,
a young...
where were you? Google,
I know, no Google
you?
in 1998. But I was like, is he like a hot little teen boy with a guitar? Is he like, who is he? Like, I needed like an image and I couldn't. So I faked it. Like the first 2.5 years that I lived there. I just faked it. People would mention Gianmarco, and my reaction would be an imitation of the reaction I had seen from other girls my age, which was like, oh, I love him.
Yeah.
Not too enthused. I hate him because I didn't want to give any more explanations, you know?
Right.
Didn't want to be asked to further explain my fandom. So I was like, yeah, I like him. Let's move on. And then cut to, I see Gianmarco on the television one day randomly, and he is a 30-something-year-old bald man. And I'm like, what?
Who has a beautiful voice.
Beautiful voice, but like everyone talked about him like he was hot, and I was like so confused.
Well, I mean, I think he is, like, a lot of people think he is very
find him
good-looking.
attractive.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
but I was just imagining something completely. I'm like, this is our pop idol? What? Then since then, I have heard all his music. I love him. I think he's the best and the sweetest and the greatest.
Would go to a concert tomorrow.
Have gone to a concert.
Have gone. But
I've paid to see him live. But at the time, I was so shocked. I'm like, who is this old man balding? I don't understand.
Also, like, another big change, and this is more like family dynamic, but I guess like also like in Peru, middle class and up has household help, you know, like cooks, cleaners, you know, all of that. And we went from this like the 6 of us tight-knit family in the US to now we're in Peru with like household staff living with you. And that changes your dynamic so much. Like, to what we were saying, like, our parents really embraced all the American stuff, traditions. When we went back to Peru, it would be like automatic. We switched to, now we don't, there's no playing catch, there's no riding the bike. Like, you have a nanny, this is that. And like, we spend time together in different ways doing different things like that Peruvians would do. We would never take those moments and translate them over to Peru. And that was kind of sad. Like, I did love that we had that tight-knit
family unit
dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah,
and I felt nostalgia for that when we moved.
Now that you mention it, like, yes, it was such a switch in the sense that, like, we were living this American family lifestyle where it was like, Dad would like conjure up these like weird fun activities or random road trips. We took the most random road trips just because now that I look back at it, it was just because like our dad did not know what to do with like 4 girls on a long weekend. He was like, long weekend coming up. What are we going to do with these 4 kids? Like, let's pack them up in the van and like drive to Hertz Castle.
And Disney and like all of the things.
Of course.
Like, I mean, that's what everybody was doing in the US in the 90s. And my parents were like, well, I guess that's what we're doing. You know?
Exactly. And yeah, you are right. It was a little sad that when we moved back to Peru, our parents code switched back to Peruvian life and Peruvian lifestyle, because now we're a Peruvian family. Let's live that lifestyle, which did not include quirky little random road trips because our dad didn't know what to do with kids. In Peru, it was very much like, we have help. So we're not scratching our heads to thinking, what are we going to do with our kids on a long weekend? You know, our kids are taken care of. So yeah, it's a little sad that we lost a little bit of that. So it's one less little pillar in the family lifestyle, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. You know, now today, present day, I think we speak comfortably in both languages to each other. And I don't really know why when we pick and choose one or the other, and we sometimes switch the language in the same phone call, but it's comfortable. In those first early years back in Peru, so when I was 12, 13, 14, it was heavily English. And then over the years, it really Spanish became the dominant language again, even though we could always switch back to English. Yeah. And I thought Spanish was going to be what would stay. And then I moved back to the US in 2014, January 2014 for grad school. I've been working in Spanish. I did my professional life in Spanish. So I'm like, Spanish is here to stay. This is the language. But now I'm in New York at school. So I'm using English for school, but Spanish. I had a group of friends from South America. We would each use like our own slang. Obviously there were Venezuelans, Colombians, Peruvians, but we would just relax and not have to think about English. And if someone was going to invite a non-Spanish speaker to join, they'd have to like text the group like, hey, can I have my friend, Annie come? Because we knew the minute that there was a non-Spanish speaker there, we're switching to English because that's the respectful thing to do. But it was almost like, this moment that we have to just be together with Spanish as the main language, you're taking that away. But the language now, the one that I'm like doing math in or like thinking in, is mostly English. I think now I've been here 10 years, right? Since 2014, 2024. I've been here 10 years, and that is my language. And I never thought that would happen again.
My journey with the languages has been a little different than yours, I must say. When I got to the States, I don't know how other 4-year-olds are getting on, but at 4, my Spanish was pretty terrible. I had a very limited vocabulary. And I didn't know how to read or write yet. So when I got to the States, I learned how to read in English first. That was the first language for me. I learned proper grammar for the first time in English. I fell in love with reading. I fell in love with books in English. They were American books. So English was that like first language for me. And then when I got back to Peru, I picked up the Spanish right back up. And of course, I had no issues with it. And I went to college in Peru just like you. And it was great. Like my entire life was in Spanish. But English was still always like an internal language that I would use for myself. But when I finally did fully embrace my Peruvianness and take all the culture and just connect with it so intensely, I was like, this is it. This is me. I am from here. These are my people. Why would I be anywhere else? Right? Yeah, it was a very intense connection. Not gonna lie. So even though, and I tried other places, but I didn't go to the States. I went to Europe. So I spent some time living there. And I just remember I was like, I love all these cities. These places are great. I could see myself living here. But I just know I need my Peru. I need my people. I need my traditions. I need my culture around me. Like, that's where I feel understood. So I would always like return home. And then in 2022, when I was living in New York, taking these classes, I really liked the life I was living.
Yeah.
Especially,
New York will do that too.
New York will certainly do that too. Especially at the time, it was 2022. So we were 2 years out from the pandemic. Peru was severely hit by it. Economically, that led to a lot of political instability, which Peru's struggling with to this day. So that mixed with how I was feeling about how much I liked New York, which surprised me. I don't know if you remember this, Lucy, but I was like, I'm going to New York to take these classes, but you know me, I'm just going to be there for a while and then I'll probably hate it and go back home.
I mean, a bit, yeah, but I was also trying to like inception you into staying. Like I was like, if I were you, I'd totally be living in New York. What are you doing?
I know. You were pushing hard for me to stay. And I was surprised by how much I really liked living here in New York. And I was like, let's keep doing this. I'm already doing it. Let's just keep doing it.
100%. And I mean, I think that is such a big thing that all immigrants can relate to. You feel what I think there's just so much opportunity. Like you can have a really big, broad life here. Not to say that you can't have a big life in Peru, but it just kind of feels, and maybe this is particular to New York, that it's a bit more like it's like limitless. Okay, so how did that land?
That was a trip. Our lives have been very long. A lot of moving in our lives, a lot of unpacking.
Moving parts, yeah.
For sure. But I really liked that. And also hearing you, like the things you remembered, brought up stuff that I had forgot. And that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, It's so fun. It reminds me of just like how lucky we are that we get to experience both. That there's things about Peru that I love. There's things about America, living in America, that I love. And it's amazing that I get to call both home. And when I go to Peru and I talk to Peruvians, and I'm just reminded of this true sense of community that's so intertwined, knows no boundaries. Will not give you a boundary, no privacy. Nope. Like, of course, everyone is going to, ask you all of the inappropriate, intimate questions, even if they haven't seen you in 5 years. But I wouldn't have it any other way, because it also feels like they got you, like they just will always be there for you. And then like all of this other stuff in America where it's just like you get to have the privacy, you get to have, there's just a lot more you could have, and it just kind of feels a bit more limitless and endless. And it's just so nice that we get to have positive things from both. I love that we can have both.
For sure. I also just, after talking about all these things, I'm really walking away with the sense of appreciation for mom and dad that I did not expect.
Like, Oof, that's rough.
Yeah. Because we're talking about how much we love having both, how we love having the Peruvianness and the Americanness. We love that about ourselves and about our identities and how we can still enjoy them to this day. And I feel that only exists because mom and dad, when they moved us, when they moved us to America so young, they really preserved our Peruvianness. And then when we moved back to Peru, they were so worried about preserving the American, like the English language with us.
Yeah.
And so they really kept both of those when we were too young to even notice what was going on. They kept both of those identities alive for us. So I'm really thankful because I don't even think they were that aware that that's what they were doing,
I kind of think they were. Like now having kids, I think you have to be really intentional about it. It's just not, or else it's just not going to happen. It's just not. Like, I mean, it could trickle down in some way, but I think it takes effort, and I think they really put in a lot of effort. So I am thankful for them. They did a good job with that. They did. And do you feel? I feel like I know the answer to this, but just to make sure, do you feel more Peruvian or more American?
Definitely Peruvian.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Like, it's not
first
a question.
And foremost. Yeah.
It's not a question. It's like, it's as if I am like 90-something% Peruvian. And there is a part of me that's American. It's there, and it is a part of me. It's not this add-on. It's not a sprinkling of. It is a part. It's a part of me, a necessary part. But it's probably like my appendix, where people are like, we don't really know what this does, but you were born with it. It's part of you. So, but yes, I am through and through Peruvian in every sense. Yes.
I 100% feel that. I am Peruvian, first and foremost. I think the American part is gaining more territory in me. I became a citizen a couple years ago. That comes with its own, raising my kids here. So maybe it's a little bit more than the appendix, but it's definitely a part of me. I do have a lot of love for this country, and I love my life here, but one can be Peruvian and have that, So.
Yeah, well, I look forward to keeping track of our, maybe it grows beyond my appendix.
It's ever changing. Like, this is not a constant, right? This is a status.
Exactly. Ever flowing, ever changing.
Ever flowing. Yes.
That's it from us. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, and check us out on Instagram at WhereWeLandPod. Hasta la vista, babies.
Ciao, ciao.